Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the ENG Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Adam with pre.dev. For those of you just joining the podcast, I'm Christian Gannon, the co-founder of ENG Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. If you want to learn how to take your software tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. I understand pre.dev is a company that's reimagining how businesses scope, plan, and integrate AI into their operations. Whether you're a dev agency, enterprise, or lean team looking to move fast, pre.dev makes it easier to go from idea to implementation with instant scoping and actionable blueprints. Can you share more about your business, the services you offer, and your role within it?
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for having me on, Christian. Really excited to share my thoughts about pre-dev and the AI market. Basically, with pre-dev, I'm the founder of pre.dev, and I have a co-founder. His name is Arjun Jain, and essentially, we see pre.dev being the first step with anybody that has an idea for software. And what pre.dev does is it basically creates a spec, a really in-depth spec that then you can either give to your engineering team or you can give to a coding agent, and it can follow that and with that information, basically execute better code.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And from your perspective right now, what trends are you really seeing right now in the AI adoption space? There's kind of a lot of noise, and I think we kind of both talked about it before the podcast as well. So what are you kind of seeing on your end?
So, I mean, I can't speak on the entire AI market because there's a lot of
Of course.
different niches. There's marketing, sales, but I think software development is definitely a hotbed, because coding agents are particularly good at writing code, and it's easy to test the output, whether it works or not. So I feel like in the software development side of things, I mean, we've seen the rise of like Cursor and
Hmm.
Windsurf, which just went through this crazy acquisition ordeal. And they're more on the coding level, coding assistant level to enhance coders' abilities. And I think that's helping, everybody in software move faster. But it's not entirely useful to those that are non-technical. And I would say, the way that Cursor, Claude Code, these coding agents work is kind of brute force, where you have to, I mean, they even call it vibe coding now, where, you're giving it an instruction and it's trying to follow um, what you said, but it might not completely understand the entire context. So I feel like that's the main issue, is that there's a lot of competition in this coding agent space. There's like, you know, 50, 60 different companies, and they're at different stages. Like you have Cursor at the IDE stage, you got like Lovable and V0 at the prototyping full stack app stage. But they all suffer from the common problem, I feel, of scalability, right?
Hmm.
So cursor and stuff is good. Like, okay, yeah, it's manned by an engineer, so that engineer has knowledge and can keep it in check. But from my experience, it's still tricky. You're walking a fine line, because if it adds a bunch of code and you don't know what it's doing, then you have to audit that really carefully. And then you have like the lovables and V0s, which are giving power to the people to create apps, people that didn't know how to code prior,
Hmm.
but it doesn't necessarily get them to the finish line. It gives them like a solid first version, and then if you need to iterate on top of it, it's slow, it's clunky, and then you end up with some spaghetti. So if the goal was to get to a working piece of software, it's you know it doesn't do the job, although it is inspiring like a whole generation of people to now get into software, which I think is huge.
100%. And I think, kind of just to reiterate what you said, and some of the topics that we've talked about in the podcast before have been really related to this, in the sense that it would be really hard for a non-tech founder to use one of these tools and develop a software, right? Just from off the bat with just, okay, can you code this for me? And then, like you said, it might give you a good base model, but it's not going to give you that end product and that MVP that you really need to go to market.
Exactly, exactly. And if you really think about it, like what's the goal? Like if you're a founder, the goal is to get a functional product to your customers. And if
Hmm.
that's the goal, I feel like the current like coding agents just don't do the job, and you do need developers at the end of the day. Where
Right.
we're at right now in the AI market, you do need a developer who has like cursor, right? And they could, they could actually like take a, say like you do a first version in Lovable or
Hmm.
V0, and then you give it to a developer that has cursor, they could get you there, and they could
Right.
get you there fast. But by yourself, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky.
Definitely. And that makes a lot of sense. And that's what I've kind of been hearing across the board. And on that topic, in relation to pre-dev, what unique advantage do you guys have in the AI coding agent race kind of right now?
Yeah, so it's funny you asked that because we didn't actually plan to be in the coding agent race at all from the start. So we actually started more on the, dev consulting side of things,
Hmm.
right? Where
Right.
whenever you're hiring or outsourcing development work, you have to break the project into milestones and then come up with, a cost, a scope. And, the more vague that is, the more disagreements might come about as the project goes. So the first problem we were solving was, okay, if you're a non-technical person, how do you communicate your requirements to the developer, any
Of
developer?
course.
So, we started with that idea to master basically planning in that spec layer. And then what we noticed as a side effect is that, okay, well, maybe the code isn't the hardest part. Like maybe if you have a really, really good spec, then writing the code is actually trivial. So like
Hmm.
our goal is just to, create a blueprint so good that the code almost writes itself. And, as we were developing this technology, we went to basically our go to market was to target development agencies and clients like startups. So if a client is looking to build, we give them a transparent estimate timeline of their project and then match them with developers. And then that conversation is like facilitated. It's a lot easier. Um, and then we also the next step after that was using pre.dev with your own team. So if you have an engineering team and you weren't outsourcing, you could connect it to Jira. So it's almost like you could get started instantly. Or if you needed to change your backlog and roadmap on the fly, that process is like hell for a PM or
Right.
engineering manager. Um, if you have hundreds of tickets, so pre.dev like makes it easy. You can just change your entire roadmap on the fly, and then we did this basically the first year, and then we were kind of venturing into code generation, and we came up with our own, coding agent that we plugged into our spec. So that was like
Okay.
the magic formula. And I think that's to answer the question, that's the advantage we have is that we've we have the best planning layer by far. Maybe the second best is like Claude Code has like a plan mode on it, right? But
Hmm.
their plan mode is just unstructured. And I think with because we're upstream, right? It's easier to swim downstream than upstream. um because we focused on that almost like PM layer, we are like the PM of the coding agents. So we could plug into in the future Devin, Claude Code, Cursor, V0 Lovable, all of them, and provide them with such a good prompt that the user doesn't really have to describe code level changes to the um coding agent.
That's awesome. And I think that's super innovative and it really touches on a lot of topics that are trending right now. And I think it would be a huge help to a lot of people, even some of the viewers that are watching this podcast, especially in the non-tech space. Like for me, when I do day trading before I run the business with my partner, but something that was really hard for me was building the algorithm that I use to trade, and gives indicators and things like that. And what's available in that specific market isn't like good enough for what I need. So I had to go back and build it. But at that time I had no tech experience. So I had to go learn the language. I had to go ask AI and it would build out like we were talking about these base models. But from someone that was a non-tech describing this model is almost impossible, right? So and it seems like it's really solving that problem of translating it and having a middleman almost between the two so that when you do plug it in as a prompt, it's perfect, right?
Yeah, it's like a source of truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you have the problem of memory with these agents as well, even if you're trying to do what you did on ChatGPT, for instance, right?
Right.
it gets lost in the mix. It gets
Hmm.
lost across chats, and you're piecing together information. You're putting it into a doc, but with pre.dev, it has like a graph representation of your entire stack from tech stack to user stories to the architecture itself, and then it uses that cross references the architecture, cites it in the documentation it provides you. So it's not just giving you a task for no reason. It's like saying, okay, well, this user story came from this message from the user, and it translates to this front end page, these backend API endpoints, these database operations. So then you have that source of truth, and then say you revise it, say something changes, like a
Hmm.
database table changes, it's like it'll trickle down the graph all the way down the spec. So that source of truth, then you get a new version of it. You could revert the version, but I think there's nothing really like it. Like Cursor, Windsurf, all these guys, they try to Claude Code, they try to create a representation of your code base internally, but it's not, you know, I don't think it's at the same level that we're doing.
100%. And why do you think that is? Do you think it's issue maybe in the operation side of those companies, or do you think it's more of they're not even there yet?
No, I think that we stumbled upon this problem. So we
Hmm.
started at like a higher level, just the idea and PM level, right?
Right.
Like user stories essentially. Like Cursor doesn't know anything about the actual requirements that
Right.
your project has. It knows about how the files work together and
Hmm.
how the code is structured and what packages you're using. But there's a level that's above that that is supremely important because it has to do with business logic itself.
Right.
And I think that's actually where our product starts. So, they would have to build architecture on top of what they have, whereas we've already abstracted that requirements layer and map that to the code.
That sounds like a huge advantage now that it's explained a couple times, and thank you for explaining in depth. I think a lot of our viewers are going to find that very interesting and maybe see if it's helpful. And kind of switching to my next topic, what's been working for you when it comes to acquiring new customers? Are you seeing more traction through outbound, partnerships, word of mouth, or maybe something else entirely?
So it's interesting because like our go-to-market's pretty interesting because, we were actually focusing on this dev marketplace. So
Hmm.
there's two parts of the marketplace. There's the dev agencies
Right.
and there's the end clients. So, and then the agencies like include freelancers too. So, um, on the agency side, right, we have a sales team, go to market effort, outbound, meeting scheduling, Apollo,
Hmm.
email sequences, all the 9 yards. And then on the client side, we focus more on like organic social media, podcast clips, you know, social media automation, stuff like that. So we kind of combine the organic plus the go to market on the other side of the marketplace.
100%. And I think it's so important to have an omni-channel marketing effort, right? If you're not working in all cylinders and all those different areas, especially when you have two different demographics of people you're trying to target, it's going to be tough to get one or the other if you can't get all of them, right? And a little bit more on the personal side, what does your typical day-to-day look like as a co-founder?
Yeah, so I mean, it is my day to day, I work long days. Like
Hmm.
it'll be 8 or 9 a.m. until some days like 12 a.m., 3 a.m. So people want to start a startup and they really want to win, you got to put the hours in. But basically I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, I make a cafecito, little Cuban coffee, gets me going, gets the
Hmm.
heart rate up. And then, some days I'll have meetings scattered about, but the main thing is I wake up, I check Slack. There's usually a couple fires I have to put out. You know, as a founder of a startup, you're wearing a bunch of different hats. So
Of
on
course.
any given day, it might be like mixing between content creation and then sales operation and then CRM stuff and then coding as well because my co-founder and I both are technical and we've kind of bootstrapped this because we
Hmm.
have a high coding skills and that makes it actually harder for us because we balance like engineering work with management work and it's it's helped us grow this fast, I guess.
That definitely makes sense. And I think that a lot of other bootstrapped entrepreneurs, myself included, can feel that a little bit. And I know that we're not on the tech side as much, but just in the sense of wearing all the hats, right? And that there's the management side of the business and then there's the deliverables, right? And any business as a founder and trying to play that balancing act can be really tough some days. And some days you get it done, some days you don't. But it's more of showing up every day, I think, is the biggest part, like what you said, and being okay with the long hours.
Exactly, and talking to customers, right? Like
Definitely.
there are these, there are startups that, safeguard, gatekeep their ideas for years,
Right.
and the truth is like that first version is gonna suck no matter what. And even if it doesn't suck, it might be great, but it's not what your customer exactly needs. So I think it's like a never-ending iteration process. That's why people are like, is pre.dev sticky? Like, what if I just use it once and then I get my MVP? I'm like, I mean, we change our idea like every 2 hours. So,
Right, right.
so I think product development is a never-ending cycle until the company, and if it does end, it's like maybe you went public or something and you're focusing on new markets or something, but it should never end, really.
100%. And something that I've noticed, and I would like you to comment as well, if this is something you've noticed, is a lot of these companies that kind of safeguard their product until delivery. Number one, the go to market is usually not great. A lot of people don't know what it is. And number two, there's a lot of scope creep. There's a lot of products or features in there that the user doesn't even need or want because they never talked to the end user before developing the product. They just thought it would be something that was helpful from
Yeah,
their own side, right?
definitely, definitely. And scope creep, that was like a buzzword we used in our pitch because
Hmm.
like actually like the problem we're solving is like misscoping, because if you look at
Right.
like the broader industry, like 50% of software budgets are actually wasted before you even start development because they
Wow.
misscope the resources. So, you know, developers are close to 100 or more an hour. So you have a team of 5 or 10 of them. Most people even have more, and
Hmm.
you have to coordinate that, and you get it wrong by 50%, that's a huge amount of money wasted before you even start. So yeah, I mean, scope creep, misscoping is honestly the fundamental problem we solve.
That's awesome. And I'm glad we're in agreement with that because I think that's a huge thing. And I think going forward, I'm hoping that a lot of these software and tech companies that are developing great products are starting to realize that in the sense of like, there's a lot of software that I use every day and you probably too, just for management reasons or for marketing reasons. And it's like, there's 8 or 9 buttons that I'll never touch because they're not helpful, right? And I think the sooner that we realize that, and like what you said, just build fast and fail fast and adjust and iterate even faster, right? So that you bring the market, you get the reviews, you get what adjustments you need to make, and then go from there, right?
Like the original version of our product was literally just like you enter in your idea, it asks you a couple questions, and it gives you the scope of work and a price estimate. So it's like
Hmm.
almost like we're like a complexity or price estimate tool at the core of it. That's something like obviously Cursor, all these guys don't do.
Right.
You could ask it for price, but it's not going to give you anything useful. And you know, for instance, like if you're building an MVP and you said like there are all these extra buttons and features, that's going to show up in the price that we show. So then
Right.
all you have to do is like you could click on what you don't want and be like, okay, actually I could trim that. I could trim that. We look at it as like, like almost like you're on the Mercedes like AMG website and you're
Hmm.
building like a sport package or something, right? You're like,
Right.
okay, I need the leather seats. Do I need the carbon fiber? Do I need the navigation system? And then your price changes based on all the little features you added. That's similar to what pre.dev does at the core. And then once you figure out, okay, this is what I want. This is exactly what I want. Now start building. Like
Right.
vibe coders go the other way, like where they're just starting off the bat, freestyling it, and then that's how you end up with a bunch of technical debt, essentially.
100%. And like you said, if you have a software development team of 5 to 10 people, that can result in a large amount of expenses, especially if you're not bootstrapped and you have to report back to investors where the money's going and you're running reports and it's not going to anywhere that is propelling the company, right?
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes we've had customers also that didn't realize that I mean, people often undershoot, right? Like
Hmm.
it trends in that people undershoot the budget and that
Right.
ends the project. for software. So, you know, it could even be we've had customers that, they scope something out and then they realize, you know what? Actually, that's just too expensive. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Right.
Which is actually not a bad result as well, because maybe you were about to sign yourself up for like a year and a half dev cycle that wasn't going to work at all.
100%. And it's so important knowing that up front before you build or even start is that outline. And that's why I'm really glad that we got you on the podcast to talk about it, because I think it's something that can be often overlooked. And switching a little bit, when you think about success today, what metrics or signals matter most to you and the pre-dev team right now?
So for us, I'm not gonna lie, like I don't look at the traditional KPIs and stuff because I feel like as if you're doing a startup, that stuff actually distracts you. So the only
Hmm.
thing that I focus on is like how happy are the customers that we have? And also, you know, are we constantly pushing the envelope? Because one thing I think we've done really well is that we've never like we're sprinting through the finish line in that
Hmm.
we're always thinking about the future, right? We're even thinking about a future where like we're a dev shop marketplace in a way, like Upwork or Clutch, but we have this AI estimation on top of it, which creates transparency. But we're also thinking about a world where developers, for whatever reason, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I mean, some of these things like Claude Code are really good. So,
Hmm.
say if there's a future in a couple of years where devs don't exist, do we still have a place? And if we just like stopped pushing our roadmap as much as possible, like uh, day in, day out, I think we wouldn't have like had the ammunition we have right now, which I think we're in a really good spot because when we first came out a year ago or year and a half, 2 years ago, this was like ChatGPT 2.5. This was before
Hmm.
Lovable. They just had GPT engineers. So even the side by side split chat that we had, like we were one of the first that was doing it, and like people were barely knew what ChatGPT is, and now we're trying to like give them full architecture and all this stuff. It was almost like people were like, "What the hell is this? I don't understand it." Like, and
Right.
now all of a sudden, like it seems like people are just coming to us automatically because they don't get to, as I said before, they don't get to the finish line with other tools, but they still like it opened their eyes, it whet their appetite. So they're like, okay, yeah, well, I got my idea kind of started. Now I have some momentum, but what do I do? Like, okay, I got to go to Upwork and hire a dev now, or I got to go to,
Right.
and then that's where like, okay, we try to position ourselves in that spot. So as soon as that frustration is found by a client, we bring them on board. We give them the same stuff that Lovable and all that gives them
Hmm.
faster. And then now you could connect through the platform with developers, message them. We give you recommendations based on the tech stack and stuff like that. So whatever dev shops match your exact stack and budget, which no one else does. You could try to Google it, but how much does my project cost, or
Right.
how do I find a React developer? It's like a never-ending chase.
100%. And talking about that roadmap that you mentioned, what's kind of next for pre-dev in the next 6 to 12 months and maybe beyond that? Are there any big product launches, feature updates, or like initiatives that you're really excited about?
Yeah. So this is funny because we had like a long-term roadmap that we almost achieved already
Hmm.
because of the coding agents, that coding
Okay.
assist we had. So our coding speed has massively increased, and we're kind of like, we've released more than we thought we would at this point. But the big things moving forward, are, so right now in our code generation layer, like we generate a prototype in an opinionated stack, which we believe is like a modern, like really flexible server-side rendered stack,
Hmm.
that's super performant, and like we basically use Remix, we use or React Router it is called now. We use Shad CN, we use like yeah, obviously it's on Node.js, and we basically mock the back end. So
Okay.
it's like called a prototype generator because we didn't want to claim that we do full stack out of the box like some
Right.
of our other competitors, which I feel like they don't like perform up to that standard. They're like full stack app in seconds, right? And that's
Hmm.
actually not not really what they give. Like even Base 44 just sold. They do give you a full stack app in like a couple minutes, but it's pretty basic. So what we do is like we mock the API right now, and we're adding like the ability to add backend automatically. So you don't even have to tell it, and it'll incorporate backend, meaning that it'll run like a Postgres instance and like the little deployed environment it has
Mm-hmm.
automatically. If you look at Lovable, you look at V0, if you need to add full stack, you need to like go to Supabase, create an account, create an API key, create a database, create a table in the database, go back to V0 or Lovable, paste in your API key, connect like if you're non-technical, like I'm pretty sure that there's no way that you're ever gonna do that stuff.
No,
Like,
definitely not.
you know? So what we do is like when we will add the back end, which we're gonna release it within the next couple of weeks, it'll automatically be running a database in the container. And then on top of that, that's like our opinionated stack. So it's like kind of a proof of concept of like, okay, you have
Hmm.
this really good spec. We can generate like a really good modern stack for you. And then the next phase, which we actually did like a partnership with NVIDIA and Northern Data, and this is more of like our enterprise use case, is that it's kind of like a solutions architect. So what we did with NVIDIA is they're trying to sell this NVIDIA Enterprise AI solution, or sorry, AI Enterprise, which it's honestly really complex to set up, and because they're a hardware company, like their docs are all scattered. So what we did is for GTC Paris, we ingested their documentation, and then in the scope of work that we spit out, it's kind of like Perplexity, where it cites the doc chunks within the plan so you can see where it came from. So if it's like setup, right, it'll be like set up your Kubernetes or your Docker container compose
Hmm.
like this and that, and then it'll link to the exact NVIDIA docs, which are disjointed and don't follow like a logical flow. So you could basically integrate NVIDIA AI Enterprise into your workflows, no matter what you're trying to build, whether it's like a RAG system or whether you're trying to do autonomous vehicles
Hmm.
or voice agents. But we feel like that's kind of our enterprise use case. Is not even like the coding agent part of it, but like really being like a solutions architect that could customize to any complex tech stack. And then we want to plug in other coding agents so instead of giving you that opinionated stack, we give you the ability to ingest your own code base with GitHub, and then have an agent just run off of our spec and check its progress. And we can honestly, like, one of the best things we could do is we can wipe its memory like after every task, because
Wow.
it could just restart, and then it still has a source of truth,
Hmm.
and basically that'll scale to any code base, any stack, and that's the goal in the future.
That's awesome. And I think that's a hefty goal. And I know that you're going to get there because, like we said, like the acceleration of how fast it took you to get to the long part of the roadmap that you thought you were going to be building for maybe a year or two more is now pretty much accomplished. It's awesome that you're pivoting quickly, right? And I think that's the biggest thing is that if you stale out, especially right now with how fast things are moving, you might die out too. So it's great to hear that you're going in that direction. And this kind of leads me to my last question, and it's a tough one, but a fun one. But if hypothetically, if you had a magic wand and could solve just one problem in the business, what would that be?
So I would say the problem that we would want to solve right now, it's like it's more specific to like our current level in our marketplace model,
Hmm.
is so we have a pretty complex revenue model, right? Like we have
Of course.
um individual users, which we call solo, that use our product, and there's subscriptions, right? But for them, it's also free to connect with developers. So they can go on there and they can scope out their stuff. If they want to see like super details, they could subscribe starting at like $25. If they want code generation, it's like $50. And then we have, like a 99 enterprise plan that's more for like teams. So it's like seat based. You can create an organization. And then we have like a 250 and a $1,000 plan that's mainly geared towards agencies, where for 250, they can actually embed we call it the AI hero experience. So
Hmm.
we have two different versions of it. One replaces their contact form directly, because most agencies have a lead intake form. They people fill out the contact form with like some basic information. Instead, it turns that into like an interactive AI experience where AI asks you follow-up questions, and then it scopes out your entire project for the agency on their side. And then the 1,000, like they get access to like all these premium features and unlimited stuff, and access to like priority ranking when we recommend them. But the point is that when we take a end client and we give them off to the dev agency, like it's standard in the dev agency market to like do commission, and
Hmm.
we basically charge a 10% commission. So one product challenge that we have right now is collecting that. So if we could wave a magic wand where people would just give us that, like our rightfully like commission from like a full project where someone
Right.
came in, could even be a free tier user, they paid 10K for an app, we're actually entitled to 1,000, but we don't have like a great way to collect it right now, other than it's in our like terms and whatever.
Right.
So that's just like an annoying thing, and like setting up escrow and all this stuff, it takes more like legal and payment infrastructure stuff. So if I could have a wand and just wave that where like we just get our cut immediately no matter what, that would be amazing.
I think that's a great answer, and I think it's super pertaining to what you guys are working on, and could totally understand how that could get frustrating project after project, right, of that occurring. And then, like you said, the legal fees that are associated with that, is that going to balance out whatever that cut was, right? Does it even make sense to go that route?
Exactly. The way I think about it is just putting it in the revenue model, because it it'll help our valuation, because it is a source of revenue aside from just the SaaS subscription, you know.
100%. That makes a lot of sense. And kind of to close out, if people want to connect with you or learn more about what pre.dev is doing, where could they go and how could they connect?
Yeah, for sure. So X pre.dev, like pre-dot dev. The website is really short. It's easy to remember. It's pre.dev, pre.dev. And YouTube, pre-dev. We have a podcast already. It's called the Artificial Intelli-Gents podcast. Might have to have Christian on there as well in the coming weeks. And Instagram is pre.dev.ai, and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I will leave the links to the website, the LinkedIn, and their Instagram, as well as the YouTube. I did check out the podcast. They are really interesting. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, I would highly recommend going and checking out some of theirs as well. They really go deep, even deeper than I can, on a lot of these topics and what's really going on in this space. But other than that, thank you again, Adam, for your time and insights today, and we will see you guys in the next video.